This is Kinda Murdery Season 1, Ghost Towns of the Mojave Desert, presented by Criminal Content.
You're rocketing down the 15 freeway between Vegas and LA. It's a scorched wasteland of airstream meth labs and unrelenting heat. This is no place you'd want to stop. But the car's on fumes, so you take the exit and you pull up to the gas station. It's abandoned, a concrete canvas that some local Michelangelos turned into the Sistine Chapel of spray paint penis. A grave marker for every crazy story lost in the desert sands. These are the ghost towns of the Mojave Desert. And this is Kinda Murdery.
Hey everybody, and welcome to Kinda Murdery Season 1, Ghost Towns of the Mojave Desert. I'm your host, Zevon Odelberg. Thanks for deciding to be here.
Located in California's Searles Valley, just off the 178, some 30 miles northeast of the Naval Air Weapons Station at China Lake, you'll find the town of Trona, California, situated on the western edge of a very special lake of its own. A lake that, like the valley it sits in, is named for Old West legend John W. Redshirt Searles. Searles Lake first attracted borax prospectors in the 1860s, and then became the setting of a 7-year-long, full-on murdery Mojave Desert Range War from 1910 to 1917. This open-armed conflict was born from the fact that Searles Lake was the United States' only reliable source of potash. And potash, or potassium carbonate, is a crucial component in gunpowder. So, with WW1 raging, and America's injury tilting toward inevitable, the value of Searles Lake soared. And in fact, by August 1917, a few short months after the U.S. joined the Allied war effort, the estimated value of Searles Lake was $500 million. That's almost $10.5 billion in today's money. Let's put that amount of mineral wealth into perspective for those of us living now in 2021. South Africa's Mpumalanga gold mine is the richest in the world and expected to turn out $475 million worth of gold per year for the next 10 years until it's tapped. Which means that adjusted for inflation, the richest gold mine in the world today is worth half as much as Searles Lake was worth in 1917. The modern town of Trona sits on the western shore of Searles Lake and was founded in 1913 as a company town. Often associated with the coal communities of Appalachia, and inspiring such famous songs as Merle Travis's 16 Tons, a traditional company town is founded entirely by one company. The company owns the store, the school, the houses. They pay their employees in company scrip, non-cash vouchers or credit lines that are accepted as tender by the company-owned businesses in that company-owned town. In other words, in the early 1900s, Trona miners were functionally the company's indentured servants. In 1913, that company was Searles Valley Minerals, Inc. Today, Searles Valley Minerals is still the largest firm in town. And local high schoolers play dirt football because the literally salted earth murders every blade of grass. Perhaps it should come as no surprise, then, that Trona's 1,900 residents have endured a 108-year history of living in a town that's been kinda murdery, pretty darn murdery, and absolutely, positively super duper murdery.
Very nice.
That was a mouthful, but boy, there's a lot going on over there.
A mouthful of potash.
Oh, man. All right, well, that voice you hear is none other than the imitable Adam Volrich. Hey, Adam, how you doing here today?
Oh, I'm fine and dandy. How are you?
I'm well. I'm also here with Brendan Hubbard. Hey, Brendan, how are you?
Great, Zevon.
Awesome. Good to hear. I'm here with Sean Christensen and, of course, the amazing, the radiant, the brilliant, it's Tess Lynch. Hey, Tess, how are you? Great to have you.
Zevon. Thank you for such a nice intro. I'm very excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, gosh, we are thrilled. We are thrilled to have you. You know, I just wanted to say right at the outset, because I'm such a big fan, you are doing this. Now, it's a subscription email letter, right? And it's called LA Weather Letter. And I subscribed, and it comes out. Does it come out once a month?
Yeah, so it generally does. I used to do it every time it rained in Los Angeles, which was less frequently.
You're like, wow. I got to write this more than twice a year.
Yeah. Realized we were in for a drought. But I did take May off to do another project, but it should be back in June. It was intended very briefly to be strictly about the weather. It didn't last very long. And now it's just it's a blog.
I love it. It's often... It reads as these poignant observations on your own life that seem to resonate with larger themes of our common experience. I mean, especially now as we've trudged through the pandemic and are hopefully seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. You wrote one in particular about sort of the positive emotional impact of your son being able to finally return to school that I just found really affecting and wonderful, and I love the way that you're able to use your own life as a lens for the larger common experience or zeitgeist that we're all going through. So everybody sign up for Tess's LA Weather Letter. It's amazing.
Thank you so much, Zevon. Yeah, it's been fun to have something to do, and definitely the positive emotional impact of having my kid back at school is I probably have a more positive emotional impact for my selfish self than he did. He's thrilled, but I'm more thrilled, to be honest.
I think we've all been going through versions of that, right?
Oh yeah. Man.
How do people sign up for LA Weather Letter?
Oh, yes. So LA Weather Letter is at tinyletter.com/LA Weather. It's free. Recently, I guess, everybody's kind of monetizing their newsletters, but having been a person who blogged for many years on Tumblr, it just doesn't, that kind of content, I'm like, that's free, because then no one can get mad if it's not what they want, because it's free.
Well, I find you to be a fantastic writer, so anybody that gets mad is just got cloth eyes as far as I'm concerned.
And we'll drop that link in the show notes as well.
Awesome. And then you said you also just completed an internship for the company's called, is it Today in Tabs?
Yeah, so it's another newsletter. I, like most people with kids, I think spent the last year. I was doing my own podcast called Night Call, and my friends and I had been doing that for a while. That was on iHeart, and I think
legendary
Night Call.
We are among podcast royalty here.
Yeah. Don't mention that one like we've never heard of it. Come on.
Night Call was really fun. R.I.P. Night Call. But when it ended, I just felt like I was like, okay, well, I definitely want to get back to writing, but I can't do it full time until my kids are in school, also full time, which they won't be until the fall. So I've been just doing newsletters, and I did, I'm the world's oldest intern. I did a month for Today in Tabs, which just covers kind of the media discourse, like what people are talking about on Twitter. Sometimes it's kind of insidery, but it's what's funny, what's pissing people off, and kind of dissecting that and talking about how that fits into the sort of cultural landscape. It was really fun, and I loved my editor. He was
awesome.
Really cool. Like it's nice to work with an editor if you haven't been, which obviously LA Weather is just me, so it's so wonderful to get edits. I love edits.
Yeah, have somebody sort of optimize your content.
Yes.
I certainly benefit from that. I tend to be something of a circuitous storyteller, as I think all of the listeners are aware of, and I feel like
No, don't neg yourself, Zevon.
Oh, you're sweet. Oh, so Today in Tabs, that sounds really cool. And now obviously you brought up Night Call. Does that mean do we get to brag about being part of your triumphant return to podcasting then? Are you back on the mic sort of at least gradually?
Well, I was just, before we started recording, I was just saying that from Night Call, I have all this equipment. So I recently did a guest spot on my former producers doing a new show for iHeart. So I got to guest on that, and I busted out the mic. And I'm always I'm sitting on my bedroom floor. That's where I do podcasting. I don't have a desk in my house that's not taken over by other family members. So I sit on the floor, but I've got like really great audio equipment. So yes, I'm now back to sitting on the floor with a mic.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, every available surface in my house tends to be part of these ever mushrooming crafting projects that Daisy gets into. So for there to be any clear space at all is kind of a blue moon occurrence. So we're benefiting from that today.
It's very exciting. I saw that Daisy made apple martinis for you guys.
She did, and of course, but my version of it,
child bartender.
That's what I'm after.
I'm seeing the appeal of procreating now.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow, I had not considered that.
I guess it's probably dubiously legal to have your 9-year-old mix your martinis for you. But are we ready to jump into the Kinda Murdery town of Trona?
I'm stoked because you mentioned something about a red shirt, and I'm curious to find out if this is a Star Trek reference, and if so, I'm very excited about whatever this story tells.
Well, maybe we can make it a Star Trek reference for you. I just got to say too that the dad joker in me can't help but I got to call it Trona California. Okay, I got to say that at least once. Oh, boy. Okay.
Oh, no.
Moving on.
Now, today we're going to try something we've never actually done before on Kinda Murdery, and before you guys have the vapors over me just going rogue here, what we're going to do is we're going to tell 3 stories that are directly interconnected. That doesn't mean that they happen one after the other chronologically, but it does mean that one wouldn't have happened without the other. And they are all bound together by one murdery mineral lake and its gunpowder ingredients. So, first up, it's another unstoppable steamroller of an Old West tall tale hero. We've had a lot of those lately. The story's called Flannel Fists of Fury, a song of potash and borax, the story of red shirt seals. Next, it's claim jumpers, conspiracy, and government intrigue in The Dry Desert Death of Engineer Davidson. And finally, bullets fly in an all-out range war as we learn about the Moriarty of mineral claim jumping, Attorney Henry E. Lee, Esquire. All right, guys, you ready for the story of red shirt seals?
Oh, yeah. Wait, I have a question real quick.
Yes, please.
Searles or Searles?
I probably should have looked that up before we started recording. Do you happen to know if it's the Searles Valley or the Searles Valley?
I thought Searles, but I'm almost always wrong. Like, always. I'm getting called out left and right. My husband's always like, Tess, it's your whatever you think it is, it's the other one.
I'm gonna go with you. We'll call it Searles so I can refer to him as Surly Searles and stuff like that. Yeah,
it opens the door. But
it does.
You can always blame me if it's wrong.
Yeah, exactly. So here we go.
I'll take
John W. Red Shirt Searles. This is a story as reported in the Oakland Tribune on December 23rd, 1912. Just so you know, I'm not making it up. You can go check it out if you want. All right. So all of the stories we're going to talk about today, as I just said, center around the mineral wealth of Searles Lake. So it makes sense that we would start with this story, Flannel Fists of Fury, because it's the story of John W. Searles and the discovery of Searles Lake. Here's something else I just want to add to the frame. Tess, I don't know about your kids, but mine is obsessed with slime. You guys know what slime is?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I have sitting literally like 10 feet behind me an entire box of, and she makes her own. So we have,
exactly.
I know where you're going
slime
with this too, because we make our own slime.
Exactly. Well, so Slime requires a particular ingredient, and that ingredient is borax. And in particular, the most ever-present borax brand is 20 Mule Team Borax. Borax is a natural mineral, and Mr. Searles and Searles Lake are the origin of 20 Mule Team Borax. So if your child is running around the house making giant messes everywhere, and I mean, I'm convinced that this marshmallow slime is just a giant substrate for just constant germ growth. Like, it actually kind of drives me crazy. If anybody's not familiar with this, it's like the flubber they used to sell when anyone my age was a kid.
And Gak. Wasn't it called Gak also?
Yeah,
the Nickelodeon branded?
Yeah, I'm from the Slime Time Live generation, so I'm very familiar with slime and getting slimed.
Getting slimed.
Well, we wouldn't have slime without borax, and we wouldn't have borax without John W. Redshirt Searles. So here we go. John W. was born in Tribes Hill, Montgomery County, New York in 1928. So at the age of 21, he gets the adventure bug. What does he do? He hops in a ship and he sails all the way down around Cape Horn, South America, all the way down around Tierra del Fuego there, waving at Antarctica, and up to the California coast. And he went on that journey because before the Panama Canal was constructed, if you wanted to sail to California from New York, that's how you had to do it. And this is kind of exciting for me because the harbor for the Trinity gold fields, which were the richest gold fields in 1849, was Trinidad, California, which happens to be in Humboldt County, which is where I'm from. So I was like, yeah, this guy went to Trinidad. I've been there. And also, I mentioned in the frame that this is a story about potash. Well, and the value of potash, which means as a kid from Humboldt County, I feel like I really missed out on a chance to come up there.
Different kind of potash.
You know, it's funny. It is and it isn't, because before they discovered potash as a natural mineral, it was in the early days of black powder. It was still a required gunpowder ingredient, and the way you would make it would be by burning wood and then soaking that wood in a pot of water.
Oh.
And that's also why something like Searles Lake was so valuable, because without mineral form potash, you literally have to just go around raising and torching all the forests in your nation if you wanted to go to large-scale black powder war.
Sounds very good for the environment.
Right.
Yeah.
Is potash the same as soda ash? Are those like interchangeable or different? Because I was going to say that with the slime and the borax, soda ash, I believe, is a component of tie-dye. So,
Sounds right.
This episode is also all just about children's crafts.
Yes.
Being kind of murdery.
Children's crafts and hippie toys, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
According to cavemanchemistry.com, they are, on a molecular level, very similar.
Man, so look, we're cracking it. These kids are basically playing with like gunpowder and
That's
destroying whole cities in
They're
California.
just playing with industrial minerals.
Yes.
Yeah, I love it because this is just adding to my arsenal of mean dad artillery to have reasons to stop my daughter from defiling the house with endless slime projects. So here we go. It's dangerous, honey. You might blow something up. I'm going to store that away for later. So anyway, he goes and becomes a gold miner in the Trinity gold fields, and he also becomes a crack shot, a sharpshooter, if you will. We had a sharpshooter in another recent episode. In fact, he's such a good shot that when his gold claims are not panning out, he'll go down into the mining camps, and it was common practice at the time to have target shooting contests in the mining camps where the trophy would be a bag of gold dust or a nugget or something. And so he'd go down into the camps, and it says it doesn't matter if it was a rifle contest or if it was a pistol contest. Searles would always win and always take the gold dust. So when he wasn't finding gold on his own, he was winning other people's gold with amazing shooting tricks.
Quite the hustler.
Yeah.
Indeed. He was exactly like Woody Harrelson in White Men Can't Jump, except red flannel shirt. That's the only difference. So he gold mines for about 11 years, and then the summer of 1860, Searles hooks up with a companion. They outfit themselves in Visalia, California. Then they cross the Sierra Nevada mountains by way of the Kern River, Mount Whitney, and Lone Pine. Anybody on the mic here today ever been to Lone Pine, California?
I think I've driven through.
So I just have to give it a quick endorsement as like absolute, I want to say hipster heaven, except I don't want any negative connotation to any of that. But you drive through this town and the entire thing is classic neon signage from what looks like 1950s and 60s Vegas, except everything is basically a wood cabin, except and just covered in classic neon. Like it's the coolest town I've ever driven through. But anyway, he goes through Lone Pine, he drops into the Owens River Valley and down into the Mojave Desert, where he and his friend discover the 40,000-acre marshland that will become Searles Lake. But at the time, he doesn't know what he's discovered. But they're camping out around these marshes, and one day they go ranging away from their camp for a few hours, and they come back, and they find that all of their supplies, including a trunk filled exclusively with Searles' favorite red flannel shirts, everything's gone. Their camp's empty. All the supplies are taken. Well, Searles surmises that they must have been stolen by the local indigenous people. So he decides he's going to track down some Native Americans, which he does. And he finds them, he finds their rancheria, and he's up on a little ridge top looking down at the camp, and he sees all of his supplies, and he sees a couple of men sort of lovingly rubbing his favorite red shirts. At which point, now, take it with a grain of salt if you want. 1912 newspaper, we might have a little bit of yellow journalism going on here, but I'm going to take it as gospel. Searles becomes so immediately compelled to retrieve his favorite shirts. I mean, sure, you're out in the desert, you have some comfy clothes, you don't want to lose them, that he forgets to shoot at anybody or do anything threatening, except that he barrels down into the camp, Flannel Fists of Fury flying to just, take back his stuff. Now, the Native Americans are startled by him, and they fire off a few shots, but because he's
They're startled?
Yeah.
They're startled by the flannel-shirted guy running down a cliff face?
Yeah. You basically have a bright red Sonic the Hedgehog with a giant white beard swinging his Santa Claus ham fists and coming at you.
It's like a cryptid. Yeah. Flannel man.
So
the Lone Pine Flannel Man strikes again.
So they fire off a few quick rifle shots, and they all miss him. At which point they decide, this crazy white man must live a charmed life. He can't be killed by bullets. And they get frightened and flee. And that's how Red Shirt Searles recovers his beloved red shirts.
So he literally frightened them off by just being that fucking bizarre?
Yep. I think the same has been said of me more than once.
But they were like, well, there's 20 of us and one of him, and he doesn't appear to be, armed, but I'm freaked out, so we're bailing.
Well, he's basically immune to bullets like Superman before Superman, so they didn't want to mess with that. So he, shortly thereafter, with the luck of his favorite red shirts, discovers copper and silver in the Mojave, because at this point still doesn't realize what a metaphorical gold mine he's sitting on with Searles Lake. Then he hooks up with newspaper and mining magnate George Hearst to help him mine his silver and copper claims.
But wait, so he finds these minerals at the same...
Yeah.
where he scared the Native Americans away from?
Not exactly that spot, but in roughly the same region as where he discovered Searles Lake and where he retrieved his shirts, he comes across rich deposits of both copper and silver, yes.
This guy has great luck.
So he hooks up with George Hearst to help him mine his copper and his silver. The only thing is, they're way out there in bumfuck Egypt, Mojave Desert salt flats, and copper and silver are super heavy. So there's not a very efficient way or any efficient way to remove the contents of the mines. And as a result, Searles goes bankrupt to the tune of $10,000. But good old lucky never keep me down red shirt Searles, he is a blacksmith by trade originally, and he's already been using the salts that he finds out in the alkaline flats, which are essentially the borax, to harden his steel. So this is the point at which he realizes, wait, I might be onto something with Searles Lake. And he goes out and discovers that he's got a massive, massive fortune in borax. At the time, borax is worth about 50 cents to $1 a pound. So that's a lot in 1860s. And it causes a borax gold rush. I mean, borax, not gold, but all of a sudden...
rush.
Yeah, a borax, literally a borax rush. And 1,500 people pour into the Searles Valley. The town that would eventually become the town of Trona springs up more or less overnight. Although many of the prospective borax miners are a little bit disappointed to discover when they arrive that Searles has already staked a claim to all the richest borax deposits because he found the lake and he was there first. So...
to be clear, it sounds very much like the Native Americans were there first.
Yes, that's true. That's the story of America. Certainly, let's sidebar that discussion for the moment.
It's a different kind of podcast.
Yes. So he works those claims for a while, and then he eventually sells out to an Oakland man named F.M. Smith. Uses the sales of his holdings to extract himself entirely from bankruptcy and become very wealthy to boot. And then he lives out his days as the superintendent of the San Bernardino Borax Company, which is the company that makes that famous 20 mule team borax that our kids all use to make the slime, until he dies at the age of 69 in 1897. And that, my friends, is the story of the founder of all the stories to come, the discoverer of Searles Lake, J.W. Redshirt, Flannel Fists of Fury, Searles.
Either way, he's not here. He can't correct you.
Tomato fucking tomato, am I wrong?
So how much, just out of curiosity, like, there's a limited supply of the borax in the lake, right? Well, there's a limited supply of lake in the lake, but I guess we'll get to that. When the lake goes away, it's not so cool in Trona, California.
Well, and it actually, though, the lake, it's just not so cool in Trona, California, because Trona is a place that human beings were never really meant to live. Everyone there is there to work the salt flats, which I can say it out loud, and on the face of it, you're like, oh, well, that's what they do with prisoners in Star Wars. They send you to work the salt flats or the spice mines or something. Nobody should be doing that. But the lake is still there, and the Searles Valley Mining Company is still the number one employer, so the lake is not, in fact, tapped out.
Really? Okay. It's weird because I keep picturing like the Salton Sea and these, kind of California water bodies that have just become so sort of ruined by climate change and by being tapped, like having resources tapped. The ones that kind of just smell like the dead fish bodies. And
well, I think that is the case, but I think this particular place was always that way. I mean, it's hardly really even a lake. It's more of like a mineral-rich, enormous bog. I don't believe there are fish that are swimming around in it. And kind of interestingly, I think what really got tapped out was the human desire to be an alkaline miner. Because, notably, the town is just slightly larger today than it was when it sprang up overnight like a salted mushroom in 1861.
Yeah. I remember it was in the LA Times. I think 2 years ago, there were a series of earthquakes there that I think the first one was they were sizable, like 6 point something earthquakes. So the LA Times visited and did a kind of overview of what it's like to live there and how insular it is and how it is really like a one industry tiny little town. They kind of keep to themselves, I think, too. But they came together after the earthquakes, as one does. Earthquakes being the great equalizer, where you're finally like, oh, I'll talk to my neighbors.
What is the population again?
Today it's around approximately 1,900 people. So it's not the smallest town we've ever done, but it's a pretty bare knuckle place to live. I mentioned at the front, that the kids in the high school play dirt football because the ground kills every prospective blade of grass. So you can't grow grass in Trona. So if you're going to play football, it's salted earth football.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sounds like Rango. The whole thing is very Rango evocative to me.
Yeah, it does.
It does.
Makes you so thirsty.
Oh, it is.
Or that
river,
that dry riverbed in Chinatown, where he's like trying to like figure out what's going on. There's a kid with the horse or something, and it just feels like there's no vegetation anywhere.
Forget about it, Jack. It's Trona, California. Yeah.
That was a terrible impression.
I don't even know who the guy is that's actually talking in that movie, if I'm honest.
Well, it's also very telling that I was like, oh, just like in Rango, and then Sean's like, or Chinatown,
and then Zevon did the worst
Rango.
Jack Nicholson impression ever.
Well, but it's not Jack who says that; it's another guy who says
the other
it
guy.
to Jack.
That's true. That's true.
I did.
You got me there.
Apparently, I did the worst other guy impression ever, which is kind of a lazy insult, if I'm honest, Sean.
It's true. It's true. I have nothing there. So we have no vegetation. We've got no grass. There's nothing.
Nothing.
Right, we have a mineral
water with no fish.
Yeah, a mineral-rich bog, which is how I describe myself.
Well, and I mean, it's fun. There's no vegetation because it's already all been smoked. Since this is the United States' richest supply of pot ash, right, guys? Anybody?
Woof.
No weed jokes for me? Come on, folks. Step up.
I was going to do that earlier because I didn't know what potash was. And then you said soda ash, and I was like, was that like the next morning when your buddy like puts a cigarette out in your beer and
Yes, that's their soda ash.
Yes, exactly right. Exactly.
And then you tie-dye with it, and that's what it's for.
Next up, we have the death of mining engineer and claim jumper Charles Davidson in the dry desert death of engineer Davidson. And this story comes from the Oakland Tribune, July 18th, 1910. And it outlines events that occurred in the latter half of June of the same year. A couple things interesting about this story. It's presented in extremely dry, sort of mumbo-jumbo legalese, almost like you're reading a law brief. And really, if I can just frame it for you guys, what this is it's a giant nothing to see here. It's a giant misdirection that begins to take shape almost like the plot of a Robert Ludlum spy novel. It's the first blush of a massive amount of international intrigue. So I should probably say at the outset that one of the things you had to do back in the day to secure your rights to a mining claim was you actually had to work it. You had to demonstrate that you had expended at least $100 in supplies, labor, or what have you, or made $100 worth of improvements on the land in a calendar year, in order to maintain your claim, because people were allowed to just go out, and they still are actually, and claim mineral rights on a piece of government land. But if you didn't demonstrate that you worked it to the tune of $100 a year, the rights for that land would revert to the government.
Right,
now,
so use it or lose it.
Exactly right. Use it or lose it. In 1992, Congress passed a law that said you could just pay a $100 a year fee. You didn't actually have to work the claim. Interestingly, $100 then was about $3,000 now. So functionally, it was a lot more expensive to keep a claim at the turn of the century than it is to keep a claim today. Why am I mentioning all this? Because this is a story about claim jumping. And the reason claim jumping was even possible was if you could go manage to squat on somebody else's claim and say it was yours and not get driven off at gunpoint or what have you, and then demonstrate that you'd done that $100 worth of work, you could actually cloud the title to the land and take it away from someone. So I always used to wonder, how do you jump somebody's claim legally? Well, that's how you did it. So that's what this.
So interesting. I never knew that.
Yeah, me neither. I learned it on Kinda Murdery.
Nice. It's an educational podcast.
Yeah.
That's so interesting, too, that they dropped the requirement that you would have to actually put in the work. That seems kind of like a noble law. I like that. They're like, you have to really work the land if you want to keep it.
Yeah, totally. It makes you sort of grab up land for honest reasons, if you will. Like, I'm actually going to be a miner and not just a greed monger, right?
Yeah.
It would
not
never
just a
work.
Landlord of salt.
Never work today.
No, exactly.
Never would fly today.
So
but wait, though, because you're also saying, though, that you could, like, legally usurp someone's claim, though. So it does kind of sound like if you were already, like, a wealthy person, you could kind of swoop in while someone was in the bathroom and put in $100 worth of work and steal a bunch of plots all at once, even.
Well, it's funny you should say that, and that's exactly right. And that's also exactly why men like George Hearst had private armies of vicious gunmen to just go drive people off of their claims and start working them and take them away. So
shirtless men in red shirts just running into towns.
Invisible red shirts now.
Yeah, shirtless men with Winchester repeaters. Just all right. So this is, interestingly, Adam, though, this story is a bit of the reverse of what you just described, which could happen too, meaning that you could be the little guy, and if you manage to kind of stay under a rock on somebody's claim and work when they weren't looking, you might be able to take a claim away from a big guy too, if you had the fortitude to do it. And
that's like a squatter, basically.
Mm-hmm. It is. It's like those people that'll never leave your house in the Hollywood Hills.
And you can't evict them, and you can't do anything, and they live there.
They're on the sublease.
Exactly. Searles Lake is so big that there are actually multiple corporations that have sizable claims on the lake. One of those is a company called the Trona Mining Company. The Trona Mining Company, despite having, something like a claim to like 28,000 of the 40,000 acres, has somehow managed to go bankrupt. And in the process, they have mortgaged their company to a British mining company called Foreign Mines Development. So functionally, a British corporation called Foreign Mines Development now owns the Trona Mining Company. And in this bankruptcy agreement, the right to purchase the Searles Lake land is granted to Standard Oil Baron, a San Francisco man named Colonel E.H. Merrill. Okay, so why is this all relevant? Because in late June of 1910, Merrill gets a phone call that says, hey, so just saw these guys leaving Berkeley in a car. There's 8 of them. One of them is this mining engineer named Charles Davidson, and I have it on good authority that they're headed out to the Trona Mining Company land in the Searles Valley to jump the claim, start working it, and try to steal all this land from the company. So Merrill claims, he immediately hops on the phone, warns the receiver, who at the time doesn't have, armed help or any real supplies to stop someone from doing this, etc. So these claim jumpers arrive in the Searles Valley. Something goes horribly wrong. It's not clear what. And mining engineer Charles Davidson dies of exposure, sunstroke, and thirst. At the point at which he dies, a guy comes out of the woodwork and says, I'm an independent journalist, and I was there, and I can tell you that actually Colonel E.H. Merrill was behind this claim jumping. He was the one that sent out Charles Davidson. E.H. Merrill says, well, that's ridiculous. I'm the guy who has the right to buy this land anyway. Why in the world would I want to cloud this title? And here's something else really bizarre that happens. Right about the time that Davidson dies, a Secret Service agent arrives from Bakersfield, heads straight out to the Mojave Desert to Searles Valley, gets there in time to save the rest of the mining party. They are extracted by a Secret Service agent. So I'm like, hold up. What in the world is a Secret Service agent doing, showing up like a superhero right in the nick of time to rescue these claim jumpers who were actually trying to cloud a title that was being guarded over by a federal receiver? What the bejiminy G's is going on? I mean...
And also, why is there even an independent... Why is anyone there besides the claim jumpers and the miners? You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't... Why is an independent journalist there? What's going on, Zevon?
right.
What's the deal?
So, what is the deal? And let me ask you, anybody know what the official purview of the Secret Service is?
It's protecting the president, right?
That's one branch of their duties. What's the second one? Anybody know? If not, I'll just jump in here.
Well, is it government officials or?
It's counterfeit money. They are in charge.
Really?
They are in charge of maintaining the integrity of America's money supply. It says a lot about what the real idols in our nation are, that we have the same people protect the president and greenbacks. E pluribus unum, baby. So what in the world is a Secret Service agent doing there? What's an independent journalist doing there? Great questions. Well, as I mentioned, it's known by this time, as it was not when Searles first discovered the lake 50 years earlier, that the real value of Searles Lake is not in the borax, but in the potash. And that's because potash is, as we said, a necessary ingredient to gunpowder. Well, World War I hasn't started yet, but tensions are running hot in Europe, and we're really only about 6 months outside of World War I. Plus, at this point, we've had enough armed conflicts with modern weaponry to realize that this is an incredible strategic asset for the United States of America. If we ever need basically an endless supply of gunpowder, which of course we will, we now have it. And at the time, Germany has literally cornered in a monopolistic nature the worldwide potash market. Germany is the only producer of potash outside of Searles Lake.
Really?
Wow.
Yes. And
did they know? I mean, was this something that they knew, but there just wasn't the demand for that much gunpowder when they started kind of cornering the lake and setting up things around that? Or was it sort of a discovery that came later?
Well, exactly right. So when the lake was first discovered, it was already a massively valuable asset just for the borax. So they didn't immediately discover the potash until some years later. Now, you know, I hate to sound like too much of a conspiracy theorist, but do we think that it's a coincidence? Right.
Really?
Do we really think that it's a coincidence that Germany, who has a monopolistic corner on the potash market, is also going to shortly become the aggressor in the First World War? Boy,
right.
Seems like you might sell a lot of gunpowder that way, huh?
Oh, dick.
Interesting.
You're setting up something here that I'm wondering if it's gonna pay off. I'm gonna lie to you, because you've got a British. Yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna let you go. I'm gonna let you go with it.
Sean is just here to wag his finger and pull his ears at me.
I'm just curious now, because now
literal finger wag.
You've set up something. You know.
Yeah. Talk about wag the dog. This is blow the dog's fucking asshole off. That's what this is. So, you know, a corporation, as we should all know, really can be set up anywhere. In fact, all the corporations in America are set up in Delaware pretty much because of advantageous tax law, regardless of where the company's actually from. So I can't prove it, but if you're going to ask me, I believe that this British mining firm is probably a shell company run by the Germans. Because here's the thing. The United States really doesn't want the Trona Mining Company to have this land. And I'm going to flesh that out in our next story. but I think we can already see that in the fact that this Secret Service agent shows up out of nowhere just in the nick of time to rescue the people that should be the criminals. Mm-hmm. I'm starting to think of sort of like a domestic sort of CIA operation happening here. And interestingly, this independent journalist, however he got there, comes out of the woodwork, and as I mentioned, he accuses Colonel Merrill of Standard Oil. We all know about Standard Oil and its influence in America as well, of being behind these claim jumpers. But this Trona Corporation land, although it's true that Colonel Merrill has the right to buy it, it's still hugely expensive. But if he were to be able to claim jump it and control the men who did that, he might just about get it for free. Am I being too much of a conspiracy theorist again? Well, let me ask you this. Here's what happens when engineer Charles Davidson dies. As soon as he dies, Merrill swoops in and he says, well, I had nothing to do with this, of course, but honestly, guys, we should be thinking about his widow and his children, and there should be no criminal charges against any of these men who were just rescued by a Secret Service agent.
What?
In addition...
That is weird.
Yeah, in addition, my cousin happens to own the New York insurance company that held the life insurance policy on Davidson.
What the fuck, dude?
Yeah. Davidson, who I had nothing to do with. I will reach... Yeah.
Well, the Secret Service wouldn't have pressed charges against you anyway.
Right. So I will reach out to my cousin out of deference to the grief of the widow and her children, and I will see to it that the insurance company pays the full amount on his life insurance policy, even though they don't have to because he died in the commission of a crime.
Holy shit.
Mm-hmm.
Wait. Did the independent journalist ever blow the lid off of all of this, or did the story just die and now we're left to kind of theorize about how deep this runs?
Well, I love that you asked that question, because this entire story was presented by a series of lawyers in the newspaper, and as I mentioned, it was presented almost like a legal brief. Like, it was very hard for me to even read and extract what was really going on. And that's part of how I realized it was this giant nothing to see here when there was obviously something to see there. And basically what the lawyers say is that this independent journalist showed up out of nowhere, said, here's my story. Any newspaper that wants to can buy it, or you guys, Colonel Merrill, you can pay me to suppress it. And the story being that Colonel Merrill was behind the claim jumping. And so the lawyers just say, this journalist was a total quack. Again, there's nothing to it. But I think there's pretty obviously something to it, especially if for no other reason than the fact that, an insurance company very, very easily agreed to pay out when they legally did not have to. That's the only time in the history of the world that has ever happened.
Yeah. Wow, that's so fascinating.
There's a 7-year-long open-fire range war that takes place between the mining companies and the claim-jumping forces of Henry E. Lee, Esquire, a lawyer out of San Francisco. This was like Mad Max Return to Thunderdome, but with a bunch of cowboys with Remington repeaters terracing around in convertible Model Ts, just shooting bullets at each other. And more than that, it's the story of Henry E. Lee, who was the, let's call him the Bugs Bunny / Wile E. Coyote of claim jumping, who may have been an American spy master to boot. So Lee goes into court and he files a counterclaim against the Trona Mining Company that we heard about in Engineer Davidson on 20,000 acres of Searles Lake. So he says this land that Trona claims to own is actually owned by me, and he has total mining claims of 28,000 acres. Now, at the time, and I think it may still be true today, the maximum size of a single mining claim was 20 acres. So that means that he filed 1,400 claims.
Whoa.
Yeah. And this is important based on what we talked about earlier, which is that to keep a claim, you had to work a claim.
Right. You got to spend that $100.
That's correct. So that means that Henry E. Lee needed to demonstrate that he had spent $140,000 working or paying people to work these claims in any given calendar year. Now,
And how many doubloons does that translate to today?
Yeah, $3.8 million in operating costs.
What?
Just to keep the claims.
Wow.
And he basically loses all of his court cases, or nearly all of them, and that the cost of that, combined with the cost of funding these hard case cowboys to drive out there and try to jump claims at gunpoint all the time, means that he's pretty much broke. And the result of that is that he has a lot of creditors. So not only does he have the Trona Mining Company coming after him, he has other individual creditors coming after him. And those people assign their claims to the Trona Mining Company, which gives the Trona Mining Company additional sort of negative leverage over Lee. And what they do is they hire essentially private investigators to follow Henry E. Lee around absolutely everywhere he goes. He goes to a restaurant, there's someone on his heels. He goes to the bathroom, someone's taking a dump in the stall next to him. I mean, he literally cannot be alone at any time.
Wait, were these hired by Trona or by the creditors, or both? They're both working
Trona,
together now.
Right. Essentially, the Trona Mining Company, who was fighting off Henry E. Lee and his claim jumpers, bought out his creditors. The reason I called him the Bugs Bunny or Wile E. Coyote of claim jumpers was because he had a history of attempting to use outlandish disguises and methods to escape his tails. His first attempt to claim jump the Tronas comes in 1910. And interestingly, what it turns out to be, and I think it's interesting in the whole milieu of everything we talked about, because you'll remember at the top of this story, I said he might just be an American spy master on top of the rest of it. It turns out that Lee is the man behind Engineer Davidson.
Whoa.
Not Merrill. Now, whether Merrill was working with Lee, we don't know. But his first attempt to claim jump comes in 1910 when he's the mind behind the Davidson party. And it's discovered that he's the mind behind them because one of the men with Davidson was a man named Layton, who had bright red Yosemite Sam whiskers. And at some point out there in the Searles Valley, there's this hard gust of hot desert wind that blows the Yosemite Sam whiskers right off Layton's face. And who should it be but Henry E. Lee.
That's amazing.
Wow.
That's why I thought of Bugs Bunny immediately, how he would dress up as the woman.
That is a fucking Looney Tune.
Yeah.
That takes chutzpah. I admire things like that. I don't care how evil you are. I like you if you do that.
Yeah, theatrical villainy is always good.
It's the best. Why be a boring villain?
Yes. So when Davidson dies in June of 1910, that temporarily stops Lee's attempts to claim jump the Trona Mining Company. In October, he tries again. This time, the laborers and the tools, including Wyatt fucking Earp,
Stop it. No.
are hidden under the rear seats of the cars. So if you've ever seen these like Toad's Wild Ride old-fashioned roadster type of cars, they have those bucket seats, right, that flip up. So according to the story, there's like a caravan of these cars, and hidden beneath them are both the men, the tools, and the weapons to support Lee's next attempt at claim jumping. So then that's the next one. He sends Wyatt Earp out there and, to gunfight with the federal receivers, because at this point there are, in fact, armed receivers that are basically federal marshals who are out on this land at the insistence of the Trona Mining Company, which is still really this British mineral company. But there's starting to be loggerheads of intent because the U.S. government at this point knows about the potash and really does not want a foreign company to own this land, even though they have been ordered to protect it on behalf of the foreign company by the federal courts. which is where this whole idea of is there a larger power behind Lee funding all of these claim jumping expeditions. And to me, the inclusion of a sort of famous white hat, if you will, in Wyatt Earp seems to support the idea that there's more to this claim jumping than just one San Francisco lawyer who's bankrupt and dresses up like Yosemite Sam.
Yeah.
His next attempt to jump the claims is in 1911, when he brings an entire truckloads of Mexican day laborers and just drops them off in the desert to like basically mill around on the claim.
Wow.
I know that's sort of not the best. Doesn't show him to be the greatest guy there.
No, it's not a charming move.
No, it's
at
not.
all.
No, it's not. It's not. So that doesn't work. When the next time he tries, he's betrayed by his own chauffeur, and that by now it's 1912. This year we come back to a lot. And this time he escapes his tail by disguising himself as a woman, exiting through the window on the third floor of a building and going down the fire escape. This is in Los Angeles. And then he gets back out there. And all of these efforts to jump these claims are ultimately unsuccessful, and they do lead to a litany of deaths. I mean, the first one we've already talked about is the death of engineer Davidson. Then one of Lee's employees got in an auto accident as part of these efforts, was unable to pay his auto bills incurred during the accident and subsequent gunfight, and he is murdered by creditors in Los Angeles. Another man who's waiting for deferred wages because Lee can't afford to pay him because Lee's gone bankrupt at this point, basically wanders off into the Mojave Desert and just dies.
Whoa.
So these claim jumping efforts, while they are sort of romantic and swashbuckling, are not without their human cost, obviously. Ultimately, Lee fails. He loses.
Crime doesn't pay.
No, it doesn't. He loses all of his court battles. He never successfully jumps any of the claims. However, he loses his final court battle as late as 1917. And at this point, the United States has already been embroiled in World War I and doesn't want the Trona Company to have the land. And basically, the United States seriously considering denying the land claims of the Trona Company on the purported grounds that the mining laws as written were really written for individual miners and never had anticipated a claim of this massive physical size, massive value, or ultimately massive strategic importance to the United States.
Yeah, but corporations are people.
Not yet. But
Thank you for speaking up for the rights of corporations.
Yes.
Well, look,
I feel like
somebody
that's
had
often
to.
overlooked. Yeah.
They aren't represented with enough vigor by our current political
That's how I
bodies.
feel.
Yeah, I do
Yes.
too. I'm looking out for Standard Oil and Johnson and
You
Johnson.
have to. Someone has to.
So
Someone needs to make sure that they have more rights than half the people in this country.
Definitely.
yes,
they have
please.
feelings too.
So I don't think, however, that it is coincidental that Lee's final attempt fails when we have a new president in Woodrow Wilson, when we have a nation embroiled in World War, and what we now functionally have is a pretty damn good reason and pretty good political leverage for the United States government to deny the Trona Mining Company's claim to Searles Lake. And that's what another piece of evidence that makes me feel like what Lee may have been is the sort of apparently comically hapless front man for a series of ill-fated claim-jumping attempts that really were the government themselves trying to cloud this foreign corporation, which we talked about could have been, for all we know, a German corporation, from having control of this strategic asset. I tend not to believe in coincidence there.
I 100% buy this conspiracy theory. But I mean, to be fair, I'm a mark for those always. But I feel like when there's a place that's so difficult to even get to, and you have all of these funny coincidences lining up and all of these motivations that are so clear, Zevon, I think you cracked it, man.
I'm inclined to agree.
I believe in your conspiracy.
Oh, thank you. Well, and by the way, speaking of conspiracies, Tess, I want to give a little shout out to your friend Caitlin Hempstead over at Lizard People. That is the best conspiracy podcast on the pod waves for my money. I had so much fun hanging with her, and everybody, you should go listen to Lizard People if you really want to delve into some conspiracies.
That's fun conspiracy, not like, the other kind.
Yeah,
Right.
the other
Right.
kind, the bad kind.
Let's get on to our 5-star review of the week. This one's from JZilla506, entitled Hillbilly to This. After his interview on HHS, I've been listening to this podcast. It's really top-notch material, great storytelling. I can just lay back, close my eyes, and follow along. Their ability to tell stories is beyond amazing. Thank you so much, JZilla506. Everybody, please leave reviews. We love it, and maybe we'll read yours on the air. Do it. Leave a review, and we will shout you out. Well, Tess, it's been so much fun having you here today. Thank you so much for joining us. I've just had an absolute blast. Really appreciate it.
This was great. Thank you so much, Zevon, for having me. This was fun. I don't think I will ever go to Trona, California, ever. This is kind of like an anti-tourist pod in a way.
Yeah, we are
Like
not exactly a
places to
travel
avoid.
show.
No.
Oh, boy.
Which is great. We're still in a pandemic. I think it's a public service to keep people at home where they belong.
See, I don't know. To me, stories like ours make me want to go to places like this. But maybe that's why I'm the host of this show. Like, I find this kind of wild, crazy, dark shit kind of appealing in terms of a trip somewhere. But
Well, Lone Pine actually kind of sold me on. It's Lone Pine, right?
yes,
With
that's
the
right.
neon?
Lone Pine.
Yeah.
Yes. No,
I think so.
you'd
I
love
would
it.
drive through Trona. Driving through Trona sounds nice, but the idea of like the soil cracking with salt and the ghosts, and I'm just like, no.
Yeah, I'm good. No thanks.
I'm good. Yeah. Thank you again for having me.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks so
you
much
for
for being on the show,
It's been a
Tess.
total
Of
blast.
course.
Well, for Adam Volrich, Brendan Hubbard, Sean Christensen, and the tremendously talented Tess Lynch, I'm Zevon Odelberg, and this has been Kinda Murdery.
This is Kinda Murdery, Ghost Towns of the Mojave Desert, presented by Criminal Content. You can find us online at kindamurdery.com and on all social media at Kinda Murdery. Email us at contact@kindamurdery.com. Listen to us on all your favorite podcasting apps: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Overcast, Google, and more. Don't forget to rate, review, subscribe, and tell your friends about the show.